Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks so much for tuning in. Today, we're going to be taking an in-depth look at my 1995 Ford F-350. This thing's a long bed dually equipped with the Power Stroke turbo diesel V8. It's also a pretty unique truck. It's an old school conversion build, so it has all of the ground effects with the additional lights. It's got the cab visor, a full custom leather interior with a bunch of wood accents and additional features just for comfort. This thing is so cool. This truck actually used to belong to my in-laws and they were looking to sell it, and I was like, I'll take it. I used to have a 2015 GMC Sierra, and there's just something about driving something more old school like this. The simplicity, the conversations that get sparked up at gas stations and whatnot. I absolutely love this thing, and the best part is it only has 102,000 original miles, so it's just barely getting broken in. This is definitely right up my alley. As with all of my reviews, I'm going to cover all of the ins and outs and take this thing on a thorough drive. There's a whole lot of stuff to cover, so without further ado, let's go ahead and start her up and let her run. As an enthusiast for old school trucks, it's hard to get much better than trucks from the 90s. Granted, I'll always have a soft spot for the older stuff, but this is the era I grew up in and can relate to the most. Being able to buy something that I had a brochure of as a kid is incredibly rewarding. In the mid-90s, Ford, Dodge, and Chevy were cooking up some sweet trucks with more advanced powertrains and new looks. In '95, Ford was the only one of the big three that was still holding steady with a more traditional body style that had its roots dating back to 1980. The last facelift of this generation was in 1992. The 95 model was more or less a carryover model, as an all-new F-Series was right around the corner. The 94 model saw a bunch of improvements, including a host of new safety-related equipment. But what it didn't have was the all-new Power Stroke turbo diesel V8, which officially launched for the 95 model year. The Ford F-Series has always been one of the highest-selling vehicles out there, and it was no different during the 1990s. Between a myriad of body styles, powertrain options, and a high level of quality, it's no surprise. In 95, there were three cab styles: the popular regular cab, the roomier super cab, both of which were available in either style side or flare side versions, and the spacious crew cab. The crew cab combined full-size pickup strength and versatility with 4-door convenience and 6-passenger accommodations. It was available in two trim levels, XL and XLT. This truck started life as an XL, but the company that did all of the custom coach work retrofitted it with custom seating and upholstery, power accessories, custom wood inlays, and a full ground effects package with a ton of marker lights. F-350 dualies would have originally just had the row of lights on top of the cab, a set of amber and red lights on the dually tubs, and a triple set of lights beneath the tailgate. When I bought this truck, only about half of the aftermarket lights were working, so I started from scratch. I made my own wiring harness and replaced all of the lights, so at night this thing lights up like a Christmas tree. I was actually able to buy all of the replacement marker lights I needed from a local hardware store. Other non-factory add-ons included bed rails, rear bumper, tailgate, toolbox, and all of the Lund accessories, such as the hood deflector, window arches, and the cab visor. The side view mirrors that were fitted to this truck were the smaller ones offered by Ford on the F-150 and lower spec 250s and 350s. I didn't want to drill additional holes for the tripod-style supports that typically came with the larger mirrors, so I just retrofitted the larger mirrors to the smaller pedestals so it still had a clean look, but with far better rearward visibility. A 5.8-liter multi-port fuel-injected V8, an 8-foot bed, and a fully trimmed interior were among the crew cab's many standard features. The backbone of the F-Series strength was a ladder-type frame that featured a special wax coating for corrosion protection. The wheelbase length for a crew cab with an 8-foot bed is 168 inches, while the overall length is 248.8 inches. The hood, fenders, dash panel, doors, front floor pan, pickup bed, and tailgate were formed from two-sided galvanized steel. The roof sheet metal was one-sided galvanized steel. This truck was set up to tow by one of the previous owners. It has an aftermarket slotted tailgate which makes it easy to hook up a gooseneck or a fifth-wheel trailer. Currently, it's only set up for a gooseneck. There's a conventional 2-inch receiver hitch beneath the bumper with the necessary electrical connector. I also installed a digital trailer brake controller. To protect the bed, I installed a full-length bed liner along with a rubber mat on the floor for extra traction. Being that there's not a lot of interior storage space, a bed-mounted toolbox was a must. About the only thing I wish this truck had was hooks in the bed sides for tying things down. Ford offered a myriad of wheel options across the F-Series lineup in '95. Ranging from basic painted steel wheels, chromed steel wheels, and deep dish aluminum wheels on the F-150, all of which measured 15 by 6 inches. On the F-250 and single rear wheel F-350, you had 8-lug steel wheels with sport wheel covers and 8-lug deep dish forged aluminum wheels. All of those measured 16 by 7 inches and came wrapped in LT 235/85 tires, regardless of whether they were 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. Dual rear wheel F-350s had their own unique wheel and tire package, which included 16 by 6 inch wheels and LT 215/85 tires. These brightly polished wheels are quite a step up over the standard steel wheels. I'm just not sure if they were factory options or an aftermarket upgrade. I recently had 7 new tires installed, including the spare tire mounted underneath the bed. While it's not cheap to replace all of the tires at once, it's certainly a whole lot cheaper when compared to the larger wheel and tire setups used on newer trucks. Being that I live on a gravel road, I elected to fit all-terrain tires for a little extra traction versus a standard highway tread tire. Surprisingly enough, I haven't noticed any significant increases in road noise with the all-terrains either. I'm quite happy with this setup. On all 2-wheel drive F-Series trucks, the front suspension was an independent twin I-beam setup with coil springs. 4-wheel drive F-150s and 250s also had independent front suspensions, but it was referred to as a twin traction beam design. It used a universal joint in the center that allowed the wheels to move independently of each other, unlike a solid axle setup. The differential is offset to the driver's side, and a slip yoke is used on the long axle side to allow the shaft to change length. 4-wheel drive F-150s still used coil springs in the front, while the 250s used constant rate leaf springs. 4-wheel drive F-350s came with a rugged solid axle front setup and constant rate leaf springs. Outback, 2-stage variable rate multi-leaf springs adjust accordingly to optimize ride comfort and load carrying capability. Auxiliary springs were standard on the F-350. Nitrogen gas pressurized shock absorbers help keep the ride smooth and controlled even over rougher roads. I honestly expected this to ride a lot rougher than it does. Of course, the ride is stiffer when the truck is unloaded, but it's by no means uncomfortable. It's actually quite pleasant on the highway. Power steering was standard. For being a big truck, this thing is easy to maneuver and steers quite nice, About the only thing you need to keep an eye out for are the dually tubs. In fact, when you stack this truck next to a lot of newer trucks, even a lot of half-tons out there, it starts to not look quite as big. It handles pretty good too. Ford's rated payload capability for a crew cab long bed F-350 with dual rear wheels was 4,570 pounds, while the max trailer rating was 10,000 pounds when using a conventional receiver hitch. With a gooseneck or fifth wheel setup, the max trailer rating was 12,500 pounds. The gross combined weight rating for this truck is 20,000 pounds, which is 3,000 pounds more when compared to the same truck equipped with the standard manual transmission. All of these numbers are with the Power-Stroke diesel engine. All F-Series pickups featured power front disc and rear drum brakes, along with a standard computer-controlled rear anti-lock brake system, which helped the driver make more controlled, straighter stops under most operating conditions. The discs on this truck are internally ventilated and have a diameter of 12.95 inches. They're clamped down by large twin-piston calipers. The drums have a diameter of 14.17 inches and feature an integral mechanical parking brake. On dual rear wheel F-350s, a 4.10 rear axle ratio was standard. The differential was an open design, but you could order a limited slip version for extra traction. When four-wheel drive was added, you also got standard auto-locking front hubs. Manual locking front hubs were optional. On the F-150 in particular, you can even opt for a touch-drive electric shift system, which allowed you to shift on the fly from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive high and back at normal road speeds by just pressing a button on the dash. F-250s and 350s were only offered with the standard floor-mounted shift lever. At the time, dual rear wheel 350s were not offered with four-wheel drive. The only way you could get a four-wheel drive 350 was in single rear wheel form. F-350s were available with 3 engines in '95. As I mentioned earlier, the standard engine was a 5.8-liter gas-fed V8 that made 210 horsepower at 3,600 RPM and 225 pound-feet of torque at 2,800 RPM. The next rung up was a 7.5-liter gas-fed V8 that developed 245 horsepower at 4,000 RPM and 395 pound-feet of torque at 2,400 RPM. At the top of the totem pole was the all-new 7.3-liter Power-Stroke turbo diesel V8. Built for Ford by Navistar, it benefited from a single Garrett turbocharger, direct fuel injection, and a hydraulic electric unit injection system. The latter uses highly pressurized engine oil to create fuel pressure directly in the injector body, as opposed to requiring a typical injection pump. At its launch, it was touted as the most advanced and powerful diesel engine ever put in a pickup. It varied greatly from its predecessor, with the bore and stroke being the only two things they had in common. On top of that, the Power-Stroke boasted fuel economy improvements of up to 15%. When I'm not towing, I typically average around 15-16 miles per gallon. This truck features dual gas tanks, one at the rear of the truck and one underneath the front of the bed. Total fuel capacity is 37.2 gallons. There's a switch on the dash that allows you to toggle between the tanks. The truck originally had an aftermarket auxiliary tank in the bed, which expanded fuel capacity and gravity fed into the front tank. Great for long distance hauling. However, it leaked pretty bad, so I never put it to use. I ended up removing it and replaced it with the toolbox. The engine is built using a cast iron block with cast iron heads and 6 head bolts per cylinder. In addition to cast aluminum pistons, a forged steel crankshaft and forged steel connecting rods. The valve train is an overhead valve design with 2 valves per cylinder and hydraulic lifters. The gear-driven alloy steel induction-hardened camshaft was designed to provide trouble-free operation and a long life. In fact, many of this engine's design features was meant to bolster reliability and durability. Ford's standard limited powertrain warranty for this engine was an impressive 5 years or 100,000 miles. The fuel pump itself is a camshaft-driven mechanical lift pump, and the compression ratio is 17.5 to 1. This is a heavy engine too, with a dry weight of just under half a ton. In 1995, it developed 210 horsepower at 3,000 RPM and 425 pound-feet of torque at 2,000 RPM. For its day, that was impressive. By 97, those numbers were increased to 225 and 450 respectively. As far as transmissions, you had a choice between a 5-speed manual or a 4-speed automatic overdrive transmission. With the automatic, there's a small switch on the end of the column shifter that locks out 4th gear, a feature that's useful depending on the driving situation when towing heavy loads. The added power of the new diesel boosted gross combination weight ratings across the board, up to 20,000 pounds with the new 250 and 350. It was also the only diesel engine in its class that was fully electronically controlled. GM's 6.5-liter V8 had a partial electronic engine control system, while Dodge's 5.9-liter inline 6-cylinder was still fully mechanical. Both competitors still used mechanical fuel injection pumps with individual nozzles at each cylinder. By monitoring engine load, speed, temperature, and barometric pressure, Ford's electronic engine control system was able to deliver excellent throttle response at any temperature, load, or altitude. When it came to cold weather reliability, the Power Stroke had a few key features to improve cold starting in sub-freezing temperatures, such as standard glow plugs that preheat the combustion chamber, the advanced injector system, and a patented exhaust back pressure device, which provided faster engine warm-up for cab heat and defrosting windshields in cold weather. This truck also has a block heater. It can be plugged into a typical 110-volt household outlet for super cold temperatures. Maintenance is also important with engines like this. After all, they're meant for heavy work. The Power Stroke was engineered to require less frequent maintenance with long-life components, including self-tensioning single serpentine belts that were designed to last up to 100,000 miles without service, a fuel-water separator that can go up to 15,000 miles before requiring service, a large capacity microfiltration oil filter, and of course the computerized engine controls, which helped pinpoint any problems for service technicians, as all of the electronic components were built into the new OBD2 system. Now let's go ahead and hear how she sounds. Like I mentioned before, this truck started its life as an XL model, but it was significantly upgraded by an outside company for the custom coach work. Whoever designed it must have been a fan of red, because this thing is red to the max. All of the wood trimming that you see is the real deal, no plywood or veneers. There's also premium plush carpet, including custom pieces on the lower door panels, as well as decorative grab handles on the doors, custom leather seats, a custom full-length overhead console, and a leather-wrapped steering wheel. Typically, XLs would have come with knitted vinyl bench seats, rubber floors in lieu of carpet, and the most basic of interior trimming. Standard features included interval windshield wipers, a power point outlet for plugging in small electrical devices, and a driver's side airbag to supplement the safety belts in models that were under a gross vehicle weight rating of 8,500 pounds. The only other safety features of significance were side door intrusion beams, a high-mounted rear stop lamp, and the rear anti-lock brake system. As part of the retrofit upgrades, this truck was originally fitted with an aftermarket 4-door power lock system and powered front windows. Unfortunately, when I bought the truck, nothing worked. The wiring was a mess, so I ended up gutting out the old aftermarket stuff and replaced it all with factory hardware and a factory wiring harness to tie it all together. I used front door switches from a late 80s F-Series, repainted them and fitted them into the existing wood panels. They worked out great because the switches are flat. Now I'm happy to say I have 4 fully operational power locks and powered front windows. I left the rear windows manual as they were originally. The F-Series upscale XLT trim level introduced a number of standard and optional convenience and comfort features, such as power windows, including power rear windows on the crew cabs. You also had power side view mirrors, remote keyless entry, an electrochromic rear view mirror, a leather-wrapped steering wheel, fully trimmed seats in premium cloth with powered lumbar for the front, and fully trimmed door panels, lower pockets, and courtesy lights. Cruise control was optional too. By '95, this generation F-Series was really starting to show its age, falling behind Dodge and GM when it came to features and build quality. That being said, I always liked these trucks for their simplicity. In their standard forms, the only soft-touch surfaces were the armrest and a padded dashboard insert. In the midst of all of the upgrades I was doing, I ended up adding a significant amount of sound-deadening material to the doors to refine things a bit more. The interior design is very ergonomic, with logically arranged controls that are easy to reach and operate. The instruments are clearly legible and straightforward as well. With the diesel engine, you get warning lights for wait to start, water and fuel, fuel filter, and engine temperature, in addition to all of the other regular gauges. As far as entertainment, an electronic AM/FM stereo with 4 speakers was standard. A cassette player was available, as was a CD player, depending on the trim level. I used this truck regularly and wanted to give it a little modern touch, so I ended up replacing the original radio with a single-DIN radio from Boss Audio Systems, specifically model number BE9ACP. It has a 9-inch detachable screen that, in my opinion, fits within the space perfectly. It includes Bluetooth streaming as well as Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so I can automatically have access to my more frequently used apps like Google Maps. I also installed a backup camera for easier trailer hookup and replaced all of the speakers with updated units. It sounds pretty good. Obviously, this truck does not have original Ford seats. There's still bench seats, but they're sectioned and far more premium of a design compared to what was offered from the factory. I'm not sure who made them, but they're incredibly comfortable, thanks to a ton of extra padding. The leather still feels like new, and like factory crew cab seats, you can seat up to 6 people. The outboard seat adjustments include back and forth and recline. Unfortunately, they don't have any adjustable lumbar. The fold-down center console has thick padding and wooden cup holders. There's no covered compartment like the factory-available convertible console, however there is a stitched pocket in between the seats. Additional storage can be found on top of the dash as well as the glove box and a small cubby to the right of the steering column. There's a pull-out ashtray too. CFC free air conditioning was optional depending on the trim level, with simple analog rotary controls in the middle of the dash. Overhead, there's a full-length custom console that features additional reading lamps for the front and rear. While no longer functional, a CB radio is conveniently mounted up top for easy cross-vehicle communication before cell phones became more widespread. The back seat of a typical crew cab isn't anything to write home about, as it's a pretty basic space. However, this is one of the real highlights of this particular truck. Instead of a stock bench seat, this setup mirrors that of the front, with fully independently adjusting outboard seats and a fold-down armrest with wood cup holders. These seats look and feel like they've barely been used. They're just as comfortable as the front, and because they can be slid back and forth and reclined, it makes for a pretty unique feature for one of these trucks. The seats operate the exact same way as the front seats. You can sit 3 people with ease, and with the center console folded down, there's a stitched storage pocket in the middle. Additional storage pockets can be found on the backs of the front seats. I will say there's not a ton of legroom. There's plenty of head and shoulder space, but depending on how tall you are, you only have so much adjustment room before the front seats would have to be moved as well. The overhead reading lamps are a nice touch, as are the matching door trim and grab handles. A solid rear window was standard on XL models, but if you sprung for an XLT, you can opt for a sliding rear window. Well everyone, that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the in-depth look at this 1995 Ford F-350. Be sure to leave a like down below because it really helps the videos a lot. And if you haven't subscribed already, consider doing so because of course there's always a lot more where that came from. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.